Let's show you what is going on in other parts of the CBD. So now you've got this situation where essential workers have been evacuated from buildings around the CBD because of the earthquake, and you've got hundreds of police still stationed in this part of the CBD outside the CFMEU headquarters on alert for protest. Now, what we're seeing at the moment, as you can see these live pictures on your screen, are dozens of police, riot gear, the shields are out. Earlier today, we saw dozens of arrests, it has to be said as well. We can't see the protesters in this picture, and I'd have to say police have been far outnumbering them so far. But given the last 2 days, they are taking nothing to chance. I believe we have Mel Christides on the ground there as well. We don't have Mel just yet, but she is. There she is. She's just popped into screen. So we'll try and get an update for her from her on the ground in just a moment. But certainly, police have been at this heightened level of alert in this stance, it might be said, for some hours now, since around 9 o'clock this morning. So going on 2 hours, a huge police presence. We did hear from the Commissioner saying that they were going to take nothing to chance today. Mel, we can see you now on our screen. We know you've been there for a couple of hours. Just tell us what has unfolded.
Well, it's been quite the stark contrast from those devastating scenes that we saw unfold here yesterday, Laura, with only several arrests made this morning, and anyone essentially attempting to enter this part of the CBD has been escorted off by police. They are taking a zero-tolerance approach today. As Shane Patton said earlier today, that they are going to bolster police resources. They had 500 here on the ground yesterday in retaliation of those 2,000 protesters that we saw descend right here where we saw that chaos unfold, and they are taking a zero-tolerance approach today. You can see behind me the Riot Squad is out in full force. They have bolstered numbers today. We've got police on horses. Again, Riot Squad outnumbering. I wouldn't even call this a protest at this stage, Laura. There's nobody in sight, I'd say, from the construction industry showing up at this stage in time. So this all unfolded, as we know. It all happened over the last few days because there's been that disastrous outbreak that's occurred in the construction sector, and as a result, the government has made it compulsory for anyone to receive that first dose of vaccination by September the 23rd. So that date is tomorrow. There was a big retaliation against that. We saw protesters, thousands descend here yesterday and several hundred the day before, and as a result the government has shut down the sector. The scenes we saw here yesterday were unprecedented. We saw protesters start here at the CFMEU headquarters, then make their way up to the Parliament steps at the top of the city, then move back down to the city, and then back up here, and then onto the Westgate Freeway, onto the Westgate Bridge there, where they sat down. It got pretty violent towards the end, Laura. It's one of the longest protests, over 6 hours or so. But as you can see, a stark contrast to the scenes you can see behind me here today.
It did get quite unruly yesterday. Mel, this earthquake struck just after 9 a.m. when there were a huge amount of police on the street bracing for more protests today. Can you tell us what happened with the police on the ground when you started to feel that shake?
It was quite frightening, Laura. It's, again, nothing like this has happened here in Melbourne for quite some time, but a 5.8 magnitude earthquake. Apparently it originated over in Gippsland, but we were stationed right near Melbourne CBD, where we witnessed buildings getting evacuated. I physically felt the ground shake underneath my feet, and we were amongst some high rises, and every building around me, we just saw people getting evacuated and moving to a safer location. We didn't see any injuries or anything occur to those particular buildings, but quite frightening nonetheless. And for that to happen on a day where we've got this unfolding, on a day where COVID cases are at an all-time high, it's quite a scary time here in Melbourne right now. Let's just take a look at these scenes that Nick's taking.
Yeah, extraordinary. Look, we are seeing the protests as well. To our cameraman, Nick, we thank him. Of course, there's a lot of journalists on the ground. As Mel reported before, she wouldn't even call it a protest, as she put it just earlier, because they are so few in their numbers. It is a number of police on the street, dozens, if not hundreds of police on the streets this morning. We can't even see a protester, a high-vis vest in sight at the moment. There are a number of journalists, but they are at the ready. So if this does erupt at any stage, and we can see how quickly it can happen, we saw that yesterday. So that presence is likely to remain for quite some time. Mel, at what point do you think the police do retreat?
Not for some time, I think. They've really made their message quite clear and known this morning that they will not tolerate any behaviour. This is the third consecutive day we've seen here of potential protests. You saw what disastrous outbreak occurred yesterday, and police, whilst they were out in full force initially with the riot squad and bolstered resources up to 500, they were essentially outnumbered, Laura. We saw, thousands of protesters hit the streets here, and they won't be tolerating this today. So with the protest yesterday lasted over 6 hours, so I think that they will be here for as long as need be to ensure that nobody from the construction industry comes here in any attempt, in any shape or form, to protest. They've actually been asking every single patron that has entered into the CBD their reason for being out today, making it pretty clear that fines of up to $5,000 will be issued for anyone not having a valid reason to be in Melbourne CBD. We are still in the midst of stage 4 lockdown here. There is only 6 reasons to leave your home. So, the streets are usually quite empty, Laura, and Melburnians here are used to this. We've endured here over 200 consecutive days in lockdown. We are reaching a world record for days spent here in isolation. It's our 6th lockdown here in the state, so tensions are at an all-time high.